Good Friday morning, everybody. This is Grace, and I want to talk about things that I don't talk about on my channel. And there's a reason behind it, and that was I'll get to it. But like things I don't talk about. When I was raised in that era, there were three things mainly you don't talk about. One's politics, one's religion, and one is sex. And that's all I remember from the ones you don't talk about. But anyway, when you're a child and you hear something like that, you say, okay, it's like a law, to you when you're a really young child, that's a law. And it gets ingrained, into you that you don't talk about those topics. Now, I cannot remember ever being one who would not talk about it, really, any of them, really. I didn't have that kind of problem. I was also an educator, so, I talked, the discussions were about many subjects. Yeah, my dogs are going to start making noise. But the other one's curious about the other one, I guess. So, anyway, one of them would be politics. Oh my goodness, really, right now, yeah. If you make an assumption that because I'm from Texas and I'm a Texan, that I have a certain bent or party ideology, no, you'd be very wrong. So don't make that kind of assumption. That's a big lesson, and don't make assumptions. But the other one is on my mind for a particular reason, and I'll be right back to talk about it. Okay, now the other one, it kind of had an odd kind of beginning, I guess. And that was back the last time I went to see my doctor. I went to my doctor's office. I saw somebody different this time. Was, I think, in September. And on the way there, I kept thinking about how I did my YouTube channel and this channel that I changed to talk a lot about narcissism and narcissistic toxic people, and I was kind of feeling burnout, and I think I even mentioned it more than once, but then also that I wanted to take a different direction with it and everything, and it was because I was feeling burnout. I was like, maybe I should move on to something else, and I've done that more than once, thought about it, and so I go into my doctor's office, and I walk, how you wait, and then they put you in a room to wait more to see the doctor. At least they do here. And I walked into that, they put me into that room, to wait for the doctor. And I went to set my purse down on the table, the little area that's got a room that I could put it on instead of putting it on the floor. And I started to put it on there, and I saw a book. I've never in my lifetime that I recall ever seeing this book in a doctor's office. Never. Okay. I've seen them in hotels, but never in a doctor's office. But so I set my purse down right next to it. That's where the area was that was open that I could put it. And I went to sit down right there. So I got that book. And you can guess what that book is, right? Yes, it was the Bible. Never seen one in a doctor's office ever. It was a full version. So I sat down and to wait for the doctor, and it could be a while. So I did something that I had learned from Adam's brother, who's my age, and he said they do that with theirs. That it's a little book they carry around with them, and that's what they do is they open it up and they turn the page and then point, and that is what the thought should be in your mind for that day. And I think other people do this too, but that was the first and only other place I've ever heard it. But since then, I've kind of heard people do that. So I thought I'd do something, I tried that. I couldn't remember exactly how they did it because that was many years ago they told me. So I just did mine, try to find something. Okay. So when I opened it up the first time, just did that, try and find something and then turn the page. It wasn't something that you could read, like a storyline or something. So I did it again, and it was, again, not something like that, So I did it the next time, and it was closer to the end, and I did the pointing thing, and I looked and I read, and I went, wow. I was just totally shocked, by what I read, because I do not recall ever having read that before in my life, and I'm fairly certain I've never read it. And pardon my dog, he's got to make noise. But it was, what I thought it was just Timothy, okay? But I don't know how you say it. It would be 2 Timothy, the second, I guess, chapter. You see, I don't know the lingo, but it was all about narcissism. It didn't have the word narcissist, but it was about narcissism, and that these are the people that you avoid. You don't, that's what I got from it. Everybody can interpret it their way, their own way. I'm very postmodern about things like that. So it's all text and how we read it and how we're going to see it. But it was amazing to me. It was like, okay, that's about narcissism. That's what should be on my brain today. That's what's on my brain often. And it gave me, then I had this feeling, I shouldn't stop. I really should not stop, making videos about it. And, I guess in a way it's part of my own, like people say, write, do a journal, do a journal. You can hear a lot of people say that that's one thing to do when you're trying to recover from narcissistic abuse. Is to do a journal, handwriting. For me, I did that. I did that for many, many years. I think I first started my first journal when I was 10 years old, if not before then. I remember having one at 10 years old. So then it became on the computer. As I got older, in 1982, I had my first computer. So I started doing the journaling thing there. Sometime after that, I don't know when. And I kept they called them back then. First it was journals, then it was called online journals, then it was called online diaries, then there were blogs, like that. And I still have one, at least, out there that I could write on. But I did all that. And then one thing that happened to me, remember this is not, I'm not giving anybody any advice, it's just my opinion, my views kind of thing. But one of the things I started to realize was I wrote a lot about it, but it soothed me so much that I didn't take care of it after that. It was like I got it out of my mind, but I didn't take care of it. Okay, now this has certainly changed from what I started, but talking about, taboo subjects kind of thing. But yeah, I had, did the journal, and I will say a lot of good things about it because it did help me to, at the same time, it soothed me, but it also got me to put my thoughts together. Okay, my thoughts were coming closer together. And I actually, when I first started doing this on a regular basis on YouTube, April, May, whenever it was, because I've done ones before that I mentioned. Well, I had forgotten that in my blog, journal, diary, whatever you online, whatever you want to call it, I had written a lot about narcissism. And I actually used the word narcissistic and narcissism, those words. And I had forgotten about it. I had clearly forgotten about it. And that's one thing that bothers me, that I had forgotten that I had written so much about it. But I had. Anyway, so this is nothing new, really, for me. And I do repeat myself. I'm well aware of that. But the thing that really bugged me, at one point, it got to the point where I said, this is just escapism for me from dealing with the actual issue, because I had progressed so far that I had written the same thing over and over, just, like I said, getting my thoughts really narrowed down a bit to where I understood. But I needed to move from there. I needed to move on and actually understand what, accept what I know, accept what it is, and move on and, go more deeper into recovery. Now, when I started doing on YouTube, I basically, in some ways, started that over, that kind of process, but I'd already processed it before. So it was more of like a reminder, like if you take a refresher course, you've already earned your degrees, but now you're taking refresher courses so you don't forget what you've already learned. And that's how it works for me. But now at this point, I do know it's, the making the videos kind of replace the writing, which I thought was a good thing. I feel like it's a good thing. And, that little situation of reading it and going to the doctor and seeing the book and reading that, it did, remind me, keep going, don't stop, don't give up. Even if, you don't get that many views on certain, that's not what it's about. It's not about that at all. It's about getting it out and working on it. Okay. Now I can say that I have certainly been through a stage where it was important to me. You know, is anybody watching, that kind of thing? I've been in and out of that. I've been on YouTube for over 2 years. And one of the things now that I used to write about, like I said, you know, online, diary, journal, blog, was jealousy, jealousy and envy. Now, me, have never been a jealous person. So for it to come up to me at this stage in my life, um, and middle-aged, to see, I'm feeling it. Jealousy, envy. People have switched the definition sometimes of each, because jealousy, I think it was envy used to be what jealousy is now, but envy basically means you want, these days, it means you want what somebody else has, but you don't care if they have it or not. And jealousy is when you want what somebody has, and you don't want them to have it. Okay, but from what I understand, it was the reverse in the past. So anyway, you know, for that, I had to look at it and say, why am I doing that? And that is a form. If you're worried about views and you see somebody else has more and you wonder why, that's a form of jealousy to me. And so for me, it was like, it was just a new, I think really it was something that I never had before. I'm being totally brutally honest here. I never did. But now I felt it. I felt it in the past 2 years. So it was one of those, what people call narcissistic fleas. Okay, because I've seen so much of it in my life. But hey, I'm putting it back on myself and saying, no, this is something you're developing. This is something you need to work with. You need to take, you know, accountability for it and deal with it and get through it and work it through, get rid of the fleas, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. So that was one thing. And I like that now that I'm at this point where I can focus more on the bad habits, the bad behaviors, the bad negative thoughts that I picked up, you know, um, from being around a lot of people. I mean, I have been around since I was born. People who were narcissistic, the whole environment I grew up in, the whole environment I live in now are two different places, two very different places. But they both have reputations, especially for the high sense of entitlement. Okay, that's the reputation. And one thing I want to mention, like I said, just because I'm Texan, don't think I believe a certain way. That's one thing that will bother me, because if you say because you live there, therefore you are this way, no. You know, where I grew up, where I live now, I'm not like they were then. I'm not like they are here, there, and here. So okay, so just kind of switch gears here. There are a lot of things I find now that I want to talk about. And I think that was the moment that it's kind of switched for me. And I said, okay, there are things now that I have progressed through so much of this recovery from narcissistic abuse that I want to get to now. And they're coming up so quickly. And I do think that talking about them would be good, but resolving it is the problem, you know. I mean, it's the issue, it's the thing I need to do, not just talk about it. And some of them are, you know, such as, like when you start a new job, you're new at it. If you walk in thinking you know everything, that's could be a problem. But if you walk in knowing, okay, I'm a new person, I'm a new employee, I have a lot to learn, how this company or corporation or they work, um, that's pretty normal. You know, you don't know everything. You know your topic, but you don't know how they do it. So you feel, in a way, in a sense, is that your maturity level in that respect isn't there. Or if you start like you start a YouTube channel, you don't know all there is yet to how it works. You know, so you're new, and I don't think you should feel so much. Or like, here's another one. If you were married a long while and then you divorced and then you know, went through the recovery from it stage and then you started dating again, it might seem like, my goodness, You know, what has happened in the world today? What is all these terms? That's what it happened to me. Because I married when I was very young. I was 18. And divorced when I was 36, 37. I can't remember. And dating was just shocking. You know, all the terminology. It was like, really? It used to be so simple. But yeah, you know, and it, even one of my sisters has said, "Do you realize that you're going through like an earlier stage again?" But I was, and she said, "You're acting like you're 18 all over again." When I was 30 something years old, and I said, and I realized, yeah, you know, I was in that sense, but not in everything, not in every area of my life. It was that one, and that's something else I'm going to talk about. Is, you know, that we should, I can still feel, I still feel things that I am not my age in. I'm not at that maturity level in my life yet. And some of it really does come from earlier, being stuck in the earlier stage, because a lot of times, if you notice, this is something I don't know how many people, if anybody discusses, but when you're around somebody who is narcissistic, they kind of keep you there. You know, they are there, they stay there. So you're dealing with somebody who's, you know, very immature, but it doesn't, they don't promote growth in you either. Okay. And you're dealing with an earlier stage, so you're not growing enough at the same time, if that makes sense. You know, I want to think more about that, because I haven't thought enough about that. Anyway, I think this is enough for this video. It's probably very long. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.